Hello, and welcome to the RCD ShareNet. I'm Dave Thompson, your host for this session, and today we are talking about financial support for students with disabilities going back to post-secondary. The big thing that it is about this is why we do this right now usually is I find that coming up September is a really transitional month a lot of times. People decide, oh, I'm going to go back to school, or I'm going to switch jobs, or I'm going to move to another city, or something like that. So we wanted to sort of prepare people for that. Plus the whole issue with COVID and whatnot else, there's a lot of different people have had to maybe switch jobs, leave jobs, change and whatnot else. So this is a very fluid sort of situation right now. So we want to make sure that we've given you some information on how to get a hold of some financial support. And we always call on our guru, Miles Storhort, and he is the Senior Policy Analyst, Targeted Learner Support Program for the Ministry of Advanced Education and Skills Training. So welcome, Miles.
Hi, how you doing? Thanks for inviting me to talk with you today. I really appreciate it.
Great, and we're just getting we're about a week away from the Paralympics in Tokyo. I'm wearing my wheelchair rugby shirt today. And Miles used to play wheelchair basketball, right?
Yeah, I played a lot of wheelchair basketball. Played with some of the national team guys back in the day. Yeah, not so much these days. So I'm a little too old for that kind of thing. Yeah.
And so it's an exciting time. So I'm going to slide right into the questions. We've only got about 4 of them, but we're going to let you sort of give them a lot of information. And so right away, what are the kind of resources that are available for students with disabilities? And the most important thing is how can they access them mostly from their home and whatnot without having to stand in lines or sit in lines or to sit on, those call sites for hours on end.
Well, yeah, thanks, Dave. I guess the first thing that anybody with that has a disability who's looking to go back to school, they've got to look into what kind of program they're interested in. Are they going to go back just sort of into general studies? Are they going to go back into specific area of study? All the public post-secondary institutions have academic advisors who can assist students and answer questions. So students can look at what their options are, what the opportunities they have to go into different program areas, and how those could potentially lead to employment. Education, especially post-secondary education, is a huge springboard for persons with disabilities to access gainful employment. My own experience, I went and got a bachelor's degree from University of Victoria, and then I moved on to a master's at University of British Columbia, and it really helped me find procure employment opportunities and led to a really fulfilling career for me, and that's something that I think all persons with disabilities should look forward to. Right. and anticipate. So once you've decided sort of the area that you would like to study, you have to just basically meet some of the general eligibility criteria. Things like you got to have a grade 12 certificate that's a dogwood in BC or from another province. So you have the general eligibility criteria to get into post-secondary. Now, with regard to disability-related supports, there are a number of financial aid programs available through Student Aid BC, and that's the area I work in. That's the area where you would go to apply for a student loan. And there's a few other eligibility criteria you have to meet. You have to be a Canadian citizen, a permanent resident, or a person with protected person status. You got to have a valid social insurance number, be a resident of BC, and of course you must be enrolled in a eligible program of study at an eligible post-secondary. All the public post-secondaries in BC are eligible, and the vast majority of their programs are also eligible.
Once you had the high school diploma, what about language for like immigrants? Is there anything?
Well, there are English second language programs if you need them. You do have to have proficiency in English to study in English, of course. And there are, as I say, there are programs at a lot of the public institutions that provide that kind of background training if you require it.
Okay.
So one of the other things you have to be able to demonstrate to qualify for a student loan is you have to demonstrate what's called financial need. And all that is when you put your application in for the student loan, you declare what your resources are, and then you look at what your living costs and education related costs are for the year. And there's a calculation done. And if your financial need, which is your living costs and your education costs, are $1 more than your assets, then you qualify for all the student loans and all the student financial aid programs. So when you apply for a student loan, and you can do this all online, you can go to studentaidbc.ca, and that will walk you through the process of what you have to do. You have to set up a Student Aid BC account, and that gets you into the application form. While you're filling out the form, which asks you for your name and your address and your social insurance number, that kind of information, financial information, it'll also ask you if you identify as a student with a disability.
Right.
If you indicate yes, that you are a student with a disability, it will then prompt you to submit a form, and that form is called an Appendix 8. And that Appendix 8 form, you fill it out with some information about yourself. You usually have to append a bit of medical documentation that verifies your disability, and so that goes along with your student loan application. Once that's been submitted and been verified, you're then eligible for the entire suite of student loan disability programs, what we like to call our accessibility supports framework. There are situations where people really, because of their disability, can't really be expected to, seek employment. And so when they do complete their studies and they're no longer attending post-secondary, through what we call the Severe Permanent Disability Benefit Program, they can apply to have their student loan debt forgiven. And there's you can get the federal loan forgiven and the provincial loan as well. But that's for people under extraordinary circumstances.
Or maybe if their disability progressed or something like that, maybe.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. If someone becomes very severely disabled while they're studying, or if their disability progresses. But right. Generally, for people that are a person who's got a disability, they're looking to get an education to help them get employed, to increase their social and economic benefit, then there are, let's just say, there's a number of programs that we have available. There's if you do qualify, you do get a student loan, you do verify your permanent disability status, then there's a $4,000 a year grant through the federal government. There's an $800 grant through the province. There's another grant that, depending on how many weeks you go to school from the province, can get you up to $1,560. And then there's $20,000 available, up to $20,000 available through the federal equipment and services grant. So this is a grant that will provide you funding to pay for something like, maybe you need a specialized tutor, you need an interpreter if you're taking American Sign Language,
or software for your computer.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, software. That's common. You are applying, and you get that. You're applying for your student loan. You've been prompted to get your Appendix 8 document submitted. We really recommend that students take that document and approach the Accessibility Services Office at the post-secondary institution that they hope to attend.
Right.
And those the staff there are very well informed. They're trained to help students, so they can help you fill out that Appendix 8. They'll help you fill out the portions of the form that help you access assistive services and technology to get at that grant funding, and they'll also help you with the accommodations that you need at the institution. So if you're going to
because that's the trick. I think we did a study a couple years ago. That's, I think, the trick. If you come from high school, and you needed support in high school, you had aid workers and things, right? But now you go into the situation and you're adult and you don't even know what the other place has. So you don't even know to ask for it, right?
That's a really good point, Dave. And the transition to post-secondary from high school is can be very challenging for students with disabilities, because, as you say, the K-12 system, the high school system, is very good at supporting students with disabilities. And that's why we're seeing so many more students now applying to post-secondary that, historically probably never would have gotten that far. But because there's early intervention and recognition of disability in the K-12 system, these students are making it through to post-secondary. So they, a lot of them need, a little bit of additional help while they're, on campus, while they're in the classroom. And the accessibility services offices at the institutions they're the place you go to get that, and to facilitate that, to make your needs known, to help you liaise with faculty, and make sure that you get an equitable experience in the classroom. We also, Student Aid BC, on top of their financial aid programs and equipment services programs, we also offer accessible services through the resource centers at the institution. So the same accessibility resource offices at the institution where you would go to talk about getting classroom supports, you can also get supports for other things.
Tap you back to you.
Yeah, and we have service delivery partners. We have the accessibility, accessible communications equity program through BCIT, which helps students that are deaf, blind, and hard of hearing with interpreting and interveners, those kind of services. We've got CAPER, which is the Center for Accessible Post-Secondary Education Resources at Langara College. And they will, as you mentioned, they provide like MP3 files, that type of thing. And then we've also got our program for the loan of assistive technology, and also the public loan bank of assistive technology through Assistive Technology BC, and those will help students who may need to borrow assistive technology, or if an institution wants to borrow assistive technology to use on campus. So and all that's available at no charge to the student. So there's a very sort of coordinated suite of programs out there to help support students with disabilities. And really the onus is the only onus on the student really is to just make sure that they make contact with their institution, apply for the student loan, identify as a student with a disability, make contact with the Accessible Services Office in your institution, and those are the sort of the steps you take to make access to our programming.
Okay, well, my second question is kind of changing on the fly as my head rolls around here. But
okay.
One thing I did want to talk about, especially with people with chronic illnesses like myself, is the frustration if they have to sit on a phone too long. And then they get on the phone and the guy goes, "Oh, you're not supposed to talk to me first. You're supposed to talk to this guy," right? And how that, what's the order that people should sort of try to do these things in?
Good question. Yeah.
Student loan first, then, scholarships, grants, and then, right?
For me, I think the most important thing to do is the student decides where it is they would like to go to school. What's the institution that's going to best support them? And usually that's a public post-secondary institution. Private institutions, are eligible for student loans, and students can attend privates. The publics tend to have more resources, and they tend to do.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I applied for some things. I applied for some things, and I couldn't get them in certain schools if it started to be a smaller snore, more specific.
Right. Yeah, no, that's totally understandable. So the student needs to decide where it is they would like to go and then approach the institution. Go to the accessibility services office at the institution, tell them, go identify it that you're even, you can do this months before you even apply for a student loan. Go to them and tell them you're thinking about coming to this institution, and let them know what kind of supports you're going to need, and then go and then make application for your student loan. And as part of that process, you're going to need to fill out and submit the Appendix 8 document, and then you go back to your accessibility services office and take that document with you, and then they can help you further. Then they can help you actually fill it out, get the details in there, make sure you've got the proper documentation to submit online, and facilitate that for you, so you don't end up running into stumbling blocks and end up having to be on a call center waiting list. And and so that to me, that would be the most strategic way for somebody to go about doing this. Now, that being said, COVID has changed the world, and it's harder for students to get into institutions, to see people, to make appointments. So a lot of institutions
just the offices being up to full capacity again. It's hard just to get the phones answered, and that's what I was going to ask. Are these offices starting to ramp up and get all those people back, or are they still kind of running at half speed?
Well, they've switched over. They very rapidly switched over to phone in services, Dave, and that's something that's, as I say, that COVID has really forced us to do. So in terms of our administrative processes, we have tailored them to make them more streamlined for students with disabilities. In the past, the student would probably have to go in to see a medical assessor, get a signature on their medical documentation. They would probably go in to see their accessibility services office and get them to help to sign off on the equipment and services grant. But now we've streamlined our administration so that really all a student needs to produce is something that indicates that the documentation came from a qualified medical assessor. And that could be something as simple as a watermark or a heading on a letter that just identifies who the assessor was. We don't need signatures from the actual medical assessor. We don't need signatures from the accessibility services office. If you phone them and talk to them, and you can facilitate transfer of documents through messaging, scanning, faxing, that kind of thing, and then you don't have to actually go to the office and meet with someone. So that makes it so basically, if someone has a bit of technology at home, a computer, they got a phone they can take pictures with, and create graphic files that they can send to the school. They don't have to actually go into the offices and meet in person.
So one of my other sort of quick questions is, because I stumbled upon a grant when I was looking for funding, and it was only for people over 25. It was called the Lifelong Learner Scholarship. So we didn't have to fight with all the young kids for the money, and it was great. I think it still exists, but I think the parameters are a lot stricter now. But my question is what are some of the things that maybe some of the more obscure things that people may not even know? Like, for instance, I was a military guy, and I went to the cadet camp out in Comox for years. They've established a scholarship fund that my son is actually eligible to apply for. And he never went to cadets or anyone else, but because he's my son, he could actually apply for support through that fund. So should people start asking, some of these questions? I know sometimes there's unions that have scholarship funds. There's all kinds of other things like that. There could be some more obscure things out there.
No, you're entirely correct, Dave. There are a lot of other scholarships and bursaries and such out there. Some of them are institution based. When I went to UBC, I managed to get Rick Hansen Fellowship for one of the years that I was there, and that really helped me with my financial situation.
But a lot of times you have to watch out for scams and things like that as well, right? Because
I'm not aware of that one, but that sounds like an excellent resource. But
yeah, it was great, and you could check too if because a lot of times you get American stuff. I had an American one and a Canadian one, but you could check to see if they were still eligible if you're in Canada, because sometimes they wouldn't specify. And those are the ones that I would watch out for. But I also heard when I was doing it, things like, sometimes people will ask for money up front or something, right?
Oh yeah, I mean, with sort of the phishing scams and things that are out there today, I would counsel people to be very cautious about those kind of extraneous opportunities. Right. I mean, I'm very familiar with what we offer through Student Aid BC and what the institutions, how they manage students. So if it's not coming from a very a readily identifiable source and one that you're familiar with, I would be very cautious.
And there should be never any sort of need for putting any sort of deposit or whatnot up front.
Never.
At all. So that's something to definitely be watching out for. And then the other thing is that just watch out for the type of information they're asking, I guess, to make sure.
If they're asking for your account numbers or your credit card numbers,
exactly.
I would be very
we can make it faster. We can put it right into your bank account and things like that, right?
That's right. We'll give you free shipping. Yeah.
Yeah. So just, even though you may get excited when you finally got on the phone and found them and you just kind of let your guard down a little bit, just make sure that you're still sort of keeping your watchful eye out on that sort of thing.
Yeah. No, I agree. I agree, too. That's really good advice.
And and that's basically how I sort of found the stuff I was going for, and it was frustrating at one point because I only needed a little bit more money, and they put me through all this testing just to find out if I needed it, and the testing cost more than the money that I needed.
Oh boy.
It was like, you're spending $5,000 to give me two.
Oh geez. Hope that doesn't happen too often.
Do you have any other advice or anything for people now that they're sort of, I guess the big thing with COVID and stuff is start early?
Yes. And just basically, I would just really encourage anybody that is, thinking about education to move forward and get engaged and go for it. It'll change your life. I found post-secondary to be really challenging, but at the end of the day, I'm just sure glad I went. Same with me. Like, I was sick. I was 40. I wasn't in a good shape physically. I had a 1-year-old, but I never expected I would ever be a university guy. It wasn't really sort of my path. And I just found it because for me, it was like my last chance at keeping my brain alive. For me, it was like, I'm going back to school and doing something, or I'm going to be an 80-year-old man and I'm 40. And my brain was basically just dying. Especially for, even if you're a mature student and, you went to high school, back in the day. So as we say, that just to let you know that the world has changed dramatically since I've been doing this job since 2008. And we've been able to make an enormous change in how students with disabilities are viewed and accommodated in post-secondary. And there's a lot more out there in terms of resources. There's a lot more understanding of what what the accommodation needs are for students with disabilities. There's a lot less stigma involved. So if you need some additional time because of you've got a ADD, ADHD condition, you need some extra time, or you need some, you need to take your exams in a area where there's very little disturbances. That's all possible.
Yeah, that's what I did. They gave me ice packs for my hands because my hand would get sore from writing. I could go to the fridge and get an ice pack.
Yeah, something as simple as that
Yep.
makes all the
And
difference.
it made a huge difference. I would have a room, I'd have a little extra time. I could stand up, I could stretch, and then I was able to do it. But if I knew that I wasn't supposed to do those things, then I wouldn't have been
Yeah,
to get past that, right?
and don't feel like it's something that you're not eligible for, or that you're putting anybody else out, because you're not. You deserve to get an education, and you deserve to improve your quality of life. So don't be afraid. Step up and take the plunge.
All right. Awesome. Got our little cheer there for all our lifelong learners. You can go to the frat parties now. No.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I wasn't going to talk about frat parties, but now that you brought it up.
But that's the thing. Like the things I knew when I was a student now at 40, as opposed to when I was younger, the way I organized myself, the things that I did. Like with me, I had to over organize because I had to plan everything because of my brain not remembering things. So I had these study plans and things. If I would have used those when I was younger,
Yeah.
yeah,
Oh,
it was amazing. But it does teach you something about yourself and just the fact of learning stuff. Like I think that started my life as being a lifelong learner in almost anything I do, right?
Yep,
And sometimes
that's right.
people reach an age and they just go, okay, I'm not going to be learning and much more anymore. And I could never think like that.
No, you're right. Post-secondary just it invigorates your intellect and everything else. It's
So
it's
we're
a
going to
great
have your
environment.
resources on the site. I think I've also got a resource for student ABC on there and for the UBC accessibility. But like you said, every large, like I know Douglas has it, I know Kwaltman has it, Langara has a great one. They all have these offices. So that's always a good step to contact. And thank you again very much for helping us out with this, Miles.
Oh, no problem. I thank you for letting me have a platform, Dave. I appreciate the ability to get out there and do some outreach.
Great. And good luck to all those new starting students in September.
Yeah.
You can
Good
do
luck
it.
to everyone.
Bye-bye.